So welcome to Anxiety Society, my struggle with mental health in the cybersecurity industry. I'm going to try something different today. Most of the talks I've done at security conferences over the years are technical. So things like finding and exploiting crypto implementation flaws in anti-malware products, to hacking multifunction printer deployments, to building large enterprise password sniffers, to whatever else is out there. That's not going to be today's talk at all. Today's talk is one on mental health. And I want to talk about it from my perspective because I've had severe anxiety for a number of years. I'm stressed out 24/7. If you're in the security industry, you probably know what that's like. And symptoms of occasional minor depression. In 2018, it peaked. And I actually went to get professional help through therapy. So in the last 2 years, I've learned lots of my colleagues and friends in the cybersecurity industry have these same issues. So I want to talk about my life, what led to a breaking point in 2018, and key things I've learned since then. So this is a new topic for me to speak about. You might like it, you might not, but again, let's try something different. So before we get into this, just one quick thing. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not trained. I'm not a trained professional in diagnosing or treating mental health. But what I am is the same as every one of you, and that's just a person going about their life, encountering all sorts of stresses and anxieties, which is ultimately kind of the great equalizer. If you're a human being going about your life, you're encountering things that will cause you to be anxious and stressed, possibly to a degree where you can't control it anymore. In my case, they got bad enough that I was actually skipping social events, I was skipping family events, I was calling in sick, and in some cases, just actually not getting out of bed. So your mileage may vary. What worked for me may not work for you, but I still want to talk about it. So this is the agenda for the presentation today. Now and then what I learned in moving forward. So now, like, I feel better now than I ever have in my adult life, but it wasn't always this way. I'm learning that many people in our industry are in a mental state right now where I was 2 years ago, and it wasn't any fun. Then will be actually a core part of this presentation. It's my head state from about 2 years ago. Everything that I was doing that led to a breaking point, but more importantly, why I was doing those things. Then we're going to talk about what I learned. So the answer to that is tons. I'm basically summarizing literally about a year of therapy down. It's like a 35-minute talk. But it took about a year of therapy to really notice differences. So that was the thing, was that there is no quick fix. Right, so don't expect a single talk with one person to fix all your problems overnight. I had assumed at first that you can just kind of pop a pill and all your anxiety and stress would go away, but that's not a thing. So I want to highlight the key things I learned through professional therapy that I felt were important to myself in getting me to where I am now. And then moving forward, this is more recent learnings that I'll say have allowed me to maintain my head state today. So this is my intro slide. It will be a bit longer than a typical intro, but that's intentional. Why do one introduction when you can do two introductions? So I'm going to introduce myself right now, and then I'm actually going to introduce myself again, but from a 2018 perspective. And you're going to see some big differences between these 2 years, and then we'll kind of get into the details. So if you know who I am, you know who I am. If not, just a quick introduction for who I am. So my name is Michael Spaling. I lead the internal security operations team at the University of Alberta. So my team does everything from campus-wide firewalls to intrusion prevention systems. We cover VPN, anti-malware systems. We do vulnerability management. We do a bit of consulting. We do security incident response, kind of the whole 9 yards. So I lead that team, and it's my full-time job. I'm also a sessional instructor here at the U of A. So I teach an advanced network security course in something called the MINT program. So MINT stands for Master of Science in Internetworking. It's a master's degree program offered jointly between the Faculty of Science and our Faculty of Engineering. So it takes students from the computing science discipline, students from the electrical and computer engineering discipline, throws them together and teaches them, I guess, like large-scale global communication networks such as the internet. So I teach a course within that program that's all about the security of data in transit. So, and then I'm also on industry advisory committee for another post-secondary here in the city. So a lot of my core focus on security has really moved to higher education. Working in the industry is my full-time job. I also spend more times with students, whether that's teaching with them, meeting with them to learn more about their desires for cybersecurity careers, mentoring some of them in capstone projects, and then also advising on course curriculum. So that's who I am today. But this was me in 2018. I was leading the security team. I wasn't teaching yet, but I was doing a whole lot of different things across a whole lot of different groups. I was leading the security team here. Three Geeks Talk Cybersecurity. I just time out for a second, get a tangent. If you're looking for a way to talk about security and just get more information out there and be more involved in your community, look to your local pop culture conventions. So if where you're from has something like a Comic-Con equivalent, they have community programming where they look for people in the community to fill out schedules, to do presentations. And I noticed in recent years that some of those ones in the United States actually have more cybersecurity panels in them. So I ran and ran a panel at one here at Edmonton for a couple of years called Three Geeks Talk Cybersecurity, which was myself, a coworker, and usually a friend of ours. And we just make our time available at a pop culture convention for an hour just to make yourselves available to anybody that wanted to talk about security. I was also planning a conference back in 2018. I was adminning a group called YEGSEC. If you're from Edmonton or even Calgary, but you've probably heard that name, YEG is the Edmonton International Area. It's the area code for the international airport here. And it's arguably one of the most active security groups in Edmonton. It's got hundreds and hundreds of people in it. Adminning a group like that, though, involves having to find speakers, involves having to find sponsorship, and there's a lot more work that goes into a group like that. Someone just spun up something outside my window. I think they're blowing all the snow out, so apologies if you can hear that. I was on 3 advisory committees. I mean, why do one when you can do 3? I was chasing CVEs. I'm actually going to talk about that a little later. I was actively speaking or seeking out guest speaking opportunities. I still do that, but I rely on people to approach me now and ask. And I was conference speaking. So an interesting thing is, and I was doing all of this while being a husband to my wife and a father to my 3 little kids. So the point of this slide is not to say, hey, Michael, you dummy. Like, look at all this stuff. Clearly it was stressful. But I want to talk about why I decided to take all this on and kind of what was going through my head at the time. So speaking of conference talks, I haven't actually spoken at a conference since 2018. So this is my first conference talk since then. I've been spending a lot of my time trying to sort my head out instead of speaking. And these issues go back many years, but I picked 2018 because it was a breaking point. So there's a story that I just want to talk about here. This will be a few minutes to talk about because it is important because it will set the foundation for this presentation. So I was speaking at a conference in Burnaby over in British Columbia in the summer of 2018. It was not a security conference, but it had a security track. And I woke up the morning of my talk just with this feeling that I've never felt before. And I'll call it this overwhelming sense of just fear and dread. And I just kind of wrote it off as maybe pre-talk jitters, which was a little weird because I didn't really get those anymore. I actually wake up quite excited to speak, kind of like I did this morning. And I told myself that when my talk is done, that overwhelming sense of dread, it'll just go away. And it didn't, actually. I finished the talk and it didn't. It was still there, as noticeable as it could be. I'd say it actually got a little worse, right? And now I'm kind of starting to worry a bit because I don't really know what to do. So I had to catch a plane from Edmonton or from Vancouver to Edmonton, and I'm driving from Burnaby to the Vancouver International Airport with U of A's Chief Information Security Officer. We're just sharing a car. He's navigating, and I'm sitting here, and I'm kind of not doing too well. I still felt good enough to drive, but I'm telling myself I don't know what's going on. There's this overwhelming sense of negative emotions. And I was just telling myself, maybe it's just the drive. Maybe I'm in an unfamiliar environment and it'll go away when I get to the airport. So spoiler alert, it didn't go away. I got to the airport and it was still there. Got through security, it was still there. I'm sitting at my gate. The plane didn't leave for a few hours and it's still there. And now I'm kind of starting to panic a bit because I'm feeling these feelings I've never felt before, just this unexplained sense of fear and dread. And as luck would have it, there was a plane leaving for Edmonton 25 minutes in 25 minutes instead of mine in 2 hours. So I actually paid $120 out of pocket just to get on that earlier flight. So if you've ever flown from Vancouver to Cal or Edmonton, or you haven't, it's a short flight. It's like 90 minutes. You do this, and you do this. About halfway through that flight, I had what I now know is kind of an anxiety attack. I couldn't breathe very well. I couldn't think very well. That feeling of dread and uncertainty was at its absolute peak. I'm literally kind of like rocking in my chair. I'm in my my mid 30s, and I'm almost on the verge of tears. Like, I'm not kidding you. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I've never felt this before. Please help. But what do? You're stuck in an airplane at 30,000 feet or whatever, and like, I could tell it, maybe a flight attendant, but what are they going to do? Like, they're just going to wait till we get to Edmonton because it's that close. So I just kind of sat there and suffered for a while. Plane landed, get home, and as soon as I walked into the backyard at my house, everything melted away. And at that point, I had been feeling these feelings for about 7-8 hours now. Still couldn't explain them. Just this overwhelming sense of fear and dread. And the next morning, when I woke up, they returned immediately. And that same day, I had to take my kids to a soccer tournament. So we ended up going. We were there for about 10 minutes. I told my wife, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I can't be here. There's something wrong in my head. I can't describe it. So we packed the kids up. We went back home. They dropped me off. They went back to the tournament. The next day, same thing. There was a barbecue in the city that happens every summer that I wanted to attend. Got in my car, made it 10 minutes. Felt this overwhelming sense of stress and anxiety, turned around, came back to my house. So I can't really describe it beyond a sense of maybe unexplained paralysis. And this is when I realized, like, I needed help. I can't even leave my house without turning around, right? And in the weeks following, I couldn't even get on my car. I had sworn off flying. Even at work, I would just start getting really anxious for no reason. Normally, I would just kind of get up and go for a walk, and that allows me to clear my head. And I do a lot of my best thinking when I'm just walking around campus. And those feelings didn't subside. So if you've ever experienced this, you know what it's like. If not, it's just this massive wave of negative emotions that end up becoming crippling. So this is when I decided to get professional help through therapy. And what I would learn in the next year, especially, was amazing. So we're going to start with this. Just ask yourself for a session, how do you define success? Like, what is success? What does it mean to be successful? How do you define it? I was having a fun conversation with a colleague around campus. We were just chatting, and I asked this question, like, what is success to you? And his answer was this. He said, Michael, when I've accomplished what you have, I'll be successful. And that was a person who kind of knew everything from that intro from 2018 slide that I was doing. And to them, success was, kind of doing anything and everything without any filter regard for personal sanity. And I remember thinking, like, don't use me as an example of success, because, maybe outwardly it appears successful, but inwardly I am not doing well. I'm a mental nutcase at this point. And I really struggle with that perception. But for me, what I learned a bit is that I had set a really high bar for success and was determined to constantly hit it. And a key reason I took on so many other responsibilities, right, is that I had convinced myself that success is defined as a long list of accomplishments and responsibilities that, if I'm being honest, which I will be, I had hoped other people would be impressed by, but not taking into account its impact on my mental health to get there. So the key words there was I hoped other people would be impressed by these accomplishments. But the real question was what is feeding that? Why am I so concerned with accomplishments? And the reality is the security industry is full of accomplishments, individual, team, organizational, right? And I wanted to be right in there with them all, right? Look at these certs that I got. Look at these CVEs that I got. Look at these presentations that I've done. Look at this volunteer work that I'm doing, all the above. And while working through this with my therapist, a key theme started to emerge around personal success. And a key thing that I learned was that a core reason for my anxieties and my stresses was not actually the accomplishments themselves, but instead it was tied to feedback around those accomplishments. So the negative impacts of positive feedback. Here's a weird juxtaposition. positive feedback is supposed to reinforce good behaviors that you want to see continued. So how does that become negative, right? If someone says, you're great at what you do, and it's someone who is in a position to declare that, what goes through your head, right? There are excellent people watching this talk right now who will probably see it in the future, who routinely get really good feedback. But how do you process that? Like, do you get cocky? Do you get arrogant? Do you kind of let it go to your head? And for me, it is common feedback, so I'm not trying to grandstand at all, but it's a key reason that made me feel the way I did. Because to be frank, I struggled with believing it. I heard it frequently enough that it was a regular reinforcement, and I wanted to maintain that level of credibility with others that they were telling me I had. And I also didn't believe I was kind of worthy of that feedback, but I also liked receiving it. Thus, I just kept raising the bar and taking on more things, right? I learned the reason for chasing CVEs, planning conferences, being on multiple committees, seeking speaking opportunities, really was to satisfy this thought I had that without those actions, everyone will think I suck. And I was worried that if I didn't do them, people in the security industry will start thinking less of me. So I constantly pressured myself to raise the bar. So I started talking about this with people that I'm close to professionally and personally in our industry. And I actually started learning, like, this was not an uncommon thing. Like, it wasn't just me. There were lots of people who were constantly feeling stressed and anxious. They were constantly feeling this need to keep raising the bar. They were constantly feeling the need to keep up with the bombardment of accomplishments all around us. So speaking of the bar, that actually became the next thing that I learned is once I realized the negative impact that this constant positive feedback was having on me, I just didn't know how to process it. So there was more to uncover. So self-doubt became a pretty common theme as well. And again, not trying to grandstand here, these are just my genuine thoughts. This is the other side of regular positive feedback, was that I didn't feel I was worried or worthy of it. To me, I was just doing my job and expected others out there to do theirs. But when I regularly heard things like great work, especially externally from where I had worked, I really actually started doubting myself. And it was such a weird thing because you would have guessed that it would have inflated an ego or something, but it didn't. Right? Instead, I didn't get cocky or arrogant. Instead, I actually got really, really anxious and really filled with self-doubt. And this is a question that I started asking myself, right? Is the work that I do actually being done at a high standard, or is the bar that I'm being compared against really low? And that's not a knock to others at all. It was just when regularly given positive feedback, and I think I'm just doing my job. I start wondering, like, what are people encountering out there? But this is self-doubt, right? And this is something that I still do struggle with a bit today. But speaking of self-doubt, a really interesting interaction with a friend actually helped reshape some of that self-doubt. And this is a major motivation to do this talk, because a single conversation with a friend really was ultimately impactful. So I want to tell a story about imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is the fear of being found out to be a fraud. And it is very common in cybersecurity, whether I'm talking with people that have been in the industry for 20 years, or whether it's students that learned about security in a course that they took last semester and really want to learn more. This sense of being found out to be a fraud is I think, very common in security. And being in a position of leadership and mentorship, I have the privilege of working with people in our industry who have this and helping them through it, while also having it a bit myself. Lots has been written on this topic, but I want to tell a story that helped reshape my thoughts about myself related to self-doubt, the bar, and feedback as it relates to imposter syndrome. So a friend of mine who wishes to remain anonymous, and I'll respect that, and I think some of you know this person, so if you know this story, just please respect their desire to stay anonymous. We were having a conversation about imposter syndrome, and I'm telling him that he's the reason I have it. Right? This is a guy who is an expert in his specific field of security. He teaches me stuff. When he speaks, I listen. When he posts about stuff, I pay attention to it. I enjoy his personal perspectives and opinions on things, and I pay attention. Right? And this is a guy who is at a level that I will never be at. And I'm telling him this. And I was like, you are the reason that I have imposter syndrome. And his reply was the greatest thing ever. It was completely unexpected. He says, this is what he says. He goes, Michael, you are the reason I have imposter syndrome. And I was like, what? Like me? There's that self-doubt again, right? But like I put this guy on a pedestal, and what am I possibly doing that would make him think that? And to summarize, basically what he said is, he goes, Michael, you're a regular speaker. You have no problems getting in front of a room with people talking about security, which is something that he never felt capable of doing. He also worked alone by himself, whereas I'm building and leading teams. And there was more to it, but the summary is that he had noticed things. There were things that he had noticed in me that he thought I was really good at, that made him struggle with where he was professionally. Well, at the same time, I was doing it to him. I was noticing things that I thought he was great at, that really made me struggle with where I was. So just a fascinating discussion. Is up until that point, right, I was self-doubting, I was worried, I was doing everything I could to maintain this credibility. I was so scared of losing. And here's the last person I would ever expect to be saying kind of that same thing to me. And it really got me thinking. So I brought that up with my therapist, and we talked about it quite a bit. But the realization that we need to talk to each other more about our worries and our fears and our doubts in cybersecurity really came up. So hence why I wanted to do this talk. I love the security industry. There's lots of stuff on technical talks, ransomware, exploits, CVEs, product solutions, a whole 9 yards. But we really need to talk to each other about ourselves and start helping each other out. So anxiety, stress, maybe some minor depression caused primarily by constant positive feedback, not knowing how to process it correctly, self-doubt, and a desire to sort of maintain this image in the community I built in my head was a disaster for my mental health. So I want to switch gears a little bit, and I want to talk about what has really, I'll say, helped me the most. I said at the beginning that I feel better now than I ever have. And we talked about my state of mind. We talked about how things were impacting me. But I want to talk about key things that reshape my perspective thanks to professional help. So again, your mileage may vary. I've got literally pages and pages and pages of notes and interesting tidbits and stuff. So it was difficult to condense, a year and a bit of therapy down into a single presentation. So I've got both personal stuff and professional things. But this is what really ultimately helped me get out of where I was in 2018 and helped me get to where I am today. But again, your mileage may vary. This helped me. The first one, this was important, is I call this the CVE slide. Leisure is what you want to do, not what you need to do. So there was a few years of my life where I figured finding vulnerabilities and stuff, reporting them, and getting CVEs was something that I told myself I was really interested in. And I was, but I was spending so much time on it that it actually became a chore, and it was no longer a hobby. I'd go down a rabbit hole at 10 p.m. I'd emerge at 2 a.m. I'd have to work at 7 a.m. and I like my sleep. I need my sleep, and that is not enough time to get sleep. And the thing though is that I considered that my leisure time, right? I didn't have to do any of it, but I told myself I needed to do it in order to maintain credibility, right, in the industry. And then through my therapist, we were able to really explore this. And this was a key line that she said: leisure is what you want to do. It's not what you need to do. And it took, I'd say, a few months to really kind of transition this. But now, I do what I want to do in my leisure time, whether that's, playing a video game the way I want to play it, and that's using the easiest mode because there's no challenge. Whether that's going outside with my kids, going for a walk, chatting with my wife. Like, leisure time has actually become far less security stuff and far more personal interest stuff. Personal interest stuff used to be security related, but I would say not anymore. Now, I absolutely believe that to be successful in the security industry, you must be passionate to be successful. I believe that interest only gets you so far, but passionate people are self-motivated, and then they'd spend their own time on it. So I'm passionate about security. I love the whole concept of it. It just fascinates me. But be mindful about burnout, right? Don't do what I did, right? Which was spending so much time chasing something that's just going to cause mental health problems. It's okay to take breaks. It's okay to go on vacation. In fact, actually, I didn't really realize this until my colleagues would tell me, but I remember one time saying I'm going to be on vacation for a week, and they're like, "You vacation? Like, you're not that person that takes vacation. Stop scrolling through feeds and just take a break. It's okay to put it all away for a while and just do what you want to do, not what you need to do." Speaking of scrolling through feeds, Here's another. I don't. I'm hoping this slide will resonate with people because I think it might be a little blunt. But stop comparing your professional accomplishments to other people's highlight reels. There is an entire presentation in and of itself on social media, and its impact on us. There's websites out there that promote themselves as professional platforms to build your context and skill sets. And if your feed is anything like mine, it is filled with accomplishments from others, many of which are actually people I don't even know or have no relationship to. And if I'm being honest, there's a constant comparison, right? They can make you feel envy. They can make you feel inadequate when you see this constant barrage of other people's highlight reels, right? And it promotes an image that everyone is better than you. Everyone is doing more than you. Everyone is living this life being these security rock stars, and I have to be part of it. So I'll absolutely talk about that and say that, yeah, I feel that way. I had a lunch with a friend who I consider quite close with here in the city, who leads the security practice at another very large institution, and I was surprised to learn that they feel the same way. Right? There's just this constant comparison. So I've actively minimized my use of those types of platforms. Instead, what I've been trying to do, and I think this was spoken in the keynote a bit this morning, was trying to pay attention to the accomplishments of people, but those ones who are immediately around me, whether that's my family or my friends or my colleagues or my team. Cheer for the successes, right? Help them become the best they can be. But I've actively tried to stop being bombarded with all of that at scale. So here's another slide. I've got a few more slides here, but what is important to you versus where do you actually spend your time? Ask someone that first part of the question. What is important to you? And they'll probably say something like, oh, my family or my spouse or my kids, my parents, my faith, whatever, right? But then ask them, where do you actually spend your time? And for me, social media, playing video games, watching TV. So those aren't bad. But in my life, there was a big disconnect between what I said was important versus what was actually important to me. And I would argue that where I was spending my time is what ultimately decided what was important to me, regardless of what I would have told people. So I started to reprioritize. My boss, Kevin, likes to use this analogy of juggling. Whatever you're juggling, some of them are made of glass and some of them are made of rubber. And you can drop the rubber ones and they'll bounce back. But if you drop the glass ones, they're gone. So know what's important. And for many years, I had that stuff kind of reversed. Is in my head, I would have treated a lot of the people around me and the relationships as rubber. Yeah, you can, they'll bounce back. But I considered my security expertise and the knowledge around me and the industry to be the glass one, right? And through this conversation with my boss and through therapy, I learned that no, it's actually the other way around. Security will always be here, but those relationships and those people maybe won't. So switch that around. So what I started doing is I started looking at something from the perspective of, if this was missing from my life, would I be sad? And I started focusing on this stuff where the answer was a resounding yes. So that meant spending more time with my wife, with my kids, those who are important to me, such as my colleagues, and still being mindful that leisure is what I want to do. But reprioritization was key. And spending my time in areas that I would miss if they were out of my life, it actually started making me happier. And I really started appreciating some of the smaller things in life. So security will always be here. It's a full-time job and then some, but other things won't. So I had to make those things a priority. And that's a balancing act, but a very good one where my personal time ended up getting rearranged. So last one that I got here, moving forward. So we've got about 3 or 4 slides here, and then that's the presentation. If you're still watching this, great. Hoping this talk resonated with you or parts of it. If you don't know where to go next, I just want to share some of my thoughts, which are a bit more recent. Some of this stuff has been brought on by work from home. It's been brought on by COVID. But here's the first one, is issues can be simple. They don't have to be complex. When I started feeling better after about 9 months of biweekly therapy sessions and applying what I was learning, I sat down in one of my sessions and I asked my therapist, I said, when are we done? Like at what point are you going to say, okay, Michael, you're better. Here's your clean bill of health. See ya. And the therapist response to that was, she says, Michael, as long as you want to see me, I'll be here. Right? People sometimes wait until they hit a breaking point, like I did. I waited until I literally couldn't leave my house without this uncontrollable sense of dread washing over me. I waited until, I don't want to say it was too late, because it wasn't, but I wish I started this years ago, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. So don't do what I did. Go ask for help. It can be simple. It doesn't have to be complex. For me personally, a lot of these days now, I still see my therapist. It's now a monthly thing, but now it's what she kind of just calls mental health maintenance, right? We've addressed a lot of the major debilitating anxiety issues and moved to working through them. So there's far less severe challenges on a monthly basis. And she kind of says, like, think of it as this routine maintenance for your car, but instead it's kind of routine maintenance for your mind. So issues can be simple. They don't have to be complex. And I'll also say that I have encountered this, like even with some of people that I know professionally, where they are at a point where I was 2 years ago. They will tell me that, and they'll just say, it'll get better. It'll get better. It's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. And, optimism is one thing, but blind optimism is a whole other thing. Go get some help. So another one is be mindful of what is personal and what is professional. This is definitely more recent and was brought on by COVID and work from home. So about 3 months into COVID, this would have been about May or June now, a lot of the anxiety and stress returned, probably as bad as it's ever been since about 2018. I switched my sessions back to bi-weekly for a couple months just to help me through this. And one of the things was a bombardment of distractions, right? We used to be, what used to be a physical door you could close and not get distracted is now gone, right? Everything's virtual now. There's countless apps and alerts and tabs going ding, 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 ding every 30 seconds. In fact, I have my phone in my pocket. I have it on vibrate and I'm ignoring it, but it has vibrated. Again, I've got 7, 8, 9. I've got 10 missed messages, but I'm just ignoring it. I'll get to it. Which is a key thing, is that being reachable 24/7 and being available 24/7 are not the same thing, right? I can be reached 24/7 via countless different methods, but being available is a whole different story, right? When COVID started and work from home started, I'd say probably for the 5 months after that, I made myself available for everyone, for everything at all hours of the day. And current efforts now are focused on basically setting boundaries and just kind of saying no. Now, yes, there are professional things that I have to do as part of my full-time job with the university. But outside of that, it's okay to say no, right? And even as recent as October of this year, I've really begun trying to separate more personal from professional. So that's both physical separation and a virtual separation. One of the things that my team was chatting about this morning is I made a comment in the B-Sides Calgary chat, how I'm actually working from the office today. And that's intentional, right? For me, I've learned it's very important that there be a physical separation between what is considered home and personal and what is considered professional and work. I actually found it really difficult to have a home office. It was just hard. So both physical and virtual separations. What are apps that I use personally? What are apps that I use professionally? So I've rearranged my office space. I've been mindful of what technology I'm using for what, even to the point where how my apps are laid out. When I open my iPhone, the first screen is all my professional apps. The other screen is all my personal apps. So I've just been building a bit of a separation there. This is the last slide in the presentation. So I just want to end with this, is be encouraging and build each other up. The security industry can be very negative. The sky is always falling. There is constant noise. Some people are great at creating problems. Other people are great at solving them. Really, the challenge is figuring out, what's actually a solution and what is just noise. But amongst all those accomplishments and definitions of success and alerts going off and the general organized chaos that is the security industry, if someone said something you loved, let them know. Right? It builds them up. You both feel great. So be encouraging, build each other up, talk about your struggles with the people around you, and help those who need to be helped. And we'll all be better for it. So that's it. That's the presentation. That's a summary of the last few years of my life. I've learned much in the last 2 years, and this presentation is just scratching the surface. Again, trying something new here. There was no content on crypto shenanigans and whatnot that I'm used to presenting on. I have no idea if this made any sense. I'm just dumping my thoughts in some hopefully organized manner here. So let me know what you thought. Hopefully this encourages someone else to speak about their challenges. And thank you. So we'll open it to Q&A. And yeah, I've been ignoring chat, sorry. So I have no idea if anybody has questions. This is where my Twitch streamer comes out and I get to go review. Any questions? I'm just going through here. Zoe's harassing Kirk. Yeah, sounds about right. That is a lot of pressure by yourself. Yes, lots of pressure. Let's see here. Honestly, good point. Yeah, Zoe. Questions. Look more questions. Questions. Lots of folks would benefit. Yeah, it's Jason. Jason Minard. He says, very happy that you decided to do the session. Lots of folks will benefit from the session, and thank you for having the courage to face it head on. One thing I want to mention, I actually considered pulling this talk. When B-Sides Calgary announced months ago that they were going to be postponing till the point in the future, I was still dealing with some of these issues, and Jason was actually one of the guys who was like, no, Michael, no, do your presentation. You need to do it. So thank you for being there, Jason. 100% agree. Thanks a ton. Glad. Thank you. Made perfect sense. Great presentation. Any questions? Anyone? Great talk. Cool. That was a great valuable talk. Cool. Type A and B. Cool. Well, I don't see any questions in chat. You've had a few minutes to put them in there. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your presentations and the conference.